Good morning, everyone. My name is Mateo Nicolas Mendoza Huachisaka, and today I have the pleasure of presenting my bachelor's thesis entitled Systematization of Pedagogical Experience in the EFL Training Program. The research was developed during my pre-professional practices in Practicum 1 and Practicum 2. Through this process, I observed English classes, planned and taught lessons, and reflect on different pedagogical aspects that influence the teaching learning process. The purpose of this presentation is to explain the theoretical foundation and the research of my research and introduce the study that guide the analysis present in the following chapters. Let's talk about the introduction. English has become one of the most important language of communication, higher education, and professional development around the world. For this reason, English language teacher education programs seek to prepare future teachers with both theoretical knowledge and practical classroom experience. One of the most valuable stages in teacher education is the practicum because it allows students teachers to observe experienced educators, teach real lessons, and reflect on their own instructional practice. According to Farrell 2022, reflective teaching helps future educators analyze their classroom experiences critically and improve their professional performance. But also, Richards and Farrell can tell us that professional growth becomes more meaningful when teachers connect educational theory with authentic classroom experience. This is key. So, based on these ideas, the research focused on the systematization of classroom experience observations and teaching experiences developed during Practicum 1 and Practicum 2 in order to identify effective teaching practice and opportunities for improvement. So, during my practicum experience, I observed different teaching contexts in both basic general education and bachillerato. Although many lessons were well organized, several instructional challenges were identified. One of the most common difficulties was the limited opportunity for communicative interaction. In several classes, the teacher led most of the classroom discourse, reducing students' opportunities to use the English independently. Another aspect was also the limited integration of technological resources. Most lessons relied on traditional materials, while digital tools were used less frequently than expected. Likewise, individualized feedback was sometimes limited because of the time restrictions, making it difficult to address every learner's needs. That is why these findings are supported by Caceres 2023, who explain us that communicative language teaching promotes authentic communication and active learner participation. Also, Sadougi and Ehasi state that teacher support and constructive feedback have a positive impact on students' development. And finally, Asparren and Legarre highlights the importance of technological resources to create interactive learning environments. Considering this observation, the following research question was established. How can the systematization of pre-professional practice contribute to improving English language teaching? Now we move into the purpose and objectives. The main purpose of this research was to systematize the teaching experience developed during Practicum 1 and 2 through classroom observation and my own teaching practice. To accomplish this objective, classroom observations were analyzed to identify teaching strategies implemented by experienced teachers. Additionally, my own experience were examined through eclectic practice. Finally, both sources of information were analyzed considering for educational components. Planning, linguistic aspects, also learning management, and finally methodology. According to Richards and Farrell, systematic reflection allows teachers to recognize successful instructional practice and identify areas that require improvement. This study not only describes classroom experience, also analyze the classroom experience critically to strengthen future professional practices. The organization of this study is into four chapters. Chapter 1 presents the literature review, which explains the theoretical concepts and previous studies that support this investigation. Chapter 2 describes the research methodology, including the context, participants, instruments, and data analysis procedures. Also, we continue with the chapter 3, which contains discussion analysis and interpretation of the classroom observation and teaching experience. And finally, we move into the chapter 4, which presents the conclusions and recommendations derived from the findings of the study. This structure allows the researchers to progress logically from theory to practice. So, let's start with the literature review, which is chapter 1. It includes five main topics that are directly related to English language teaching. The first one, didactic planning, language teaching methods, teaching strategies, activities, materials, and resources, and finally, teachers' language proficiency together with classroom management. These concepts help me compare classroom observation with current educational theory. This chapter provides the theoretical foundation that guide the analysis carried out during the practicum experience. So, let's start with didactic planning. The first topic of the literature review is didactic planning in EFL. Lesson planning is considered one of the most important responsibilities of every teacher because it provides organization, coherence, and clear direction through the instructional process. That's why, according to Richards and Farrell, careful planning reduces improvisation and allows teachers to organize learning experience that respond to students' educational needs. Likewise, Richard explained that effective lessons plan should include four essential elements: clear learning objectives, logically sequenced activities, appropriate instructional materials, and assessment procedures aligned with the expected learning outcomes. During my practicum one, I observed that lessons with well-structured planning generally promote better classroom organizations, greater student participation, and improve understanding of the instructional content. These observations confirm that important role that lesson planning plays in successful English language teaching. So, moving into language teaching methods, they have evolved considerably over the years. Traditional approach mainly emphasize grammatical accuracy and teacher guidance. As Al-Mesawi says, these methods provide a structured instruction and helps learners to develop a solid understanding of grammar. One example is the grammar translation methods, which focus on grammar explanation, vocabulary memorization, and translation between the first language and second one. Another traditional approach is the direct method. As Zachary explains, these methods encourage teachers to use only the target language during instruction, allowing learners to develop listening and speaking skills through direct communication instead of translation. Although these methods continue to contribute to language education, current English teaching increasingly emphasizes communication, learner participation, and authentic language use. For this reason, the following section presents the modern approach that currently guides English. Now, talking about the language teaching methods, we have learned certain approaches which have become increasingly important. One of the most influential approach is communicative language teaching. According to Richards, this method encourages learners to use English for authentic communication rather than simply memorizing grammar rules. The main objective is to develop communicative competence by engaging students in meaningful interaction in real-life situations. Another relevant approach is content-based instruction. As Hugh and Al-Sakaf explain, this method integrates language learning with academic content, allowing students to develop both subject knowledge and language skills. This modern approach promotes active participation, collaboration, and meaningful learning because during my practicum one, I observed that when teachers encourage interaction and authentic communications, students became more engaged and demonstrated greater confidence when they use the English. Now, moving into teaching strategies in EFL, the next topic focuses on teaching strategies in English as a foreign language. Teaching strategies are essential because they help learners organize, monitor, and evaluate their own learning. Oxford says that effective learning strategies promote learner autonomy and contribute to long term academic success. Different strategies support the development of specific language skills. For example, Tells explains that listening comprehension improves when students use prediction and inferencing strategies before and during listening activities. Hugh also states that speaking skills can be strengthened through role plays, collaborative discussions, and problem solving activities. These strategies were particularly relevant in my research because it helped me to explain how classroom activities can help students to develop grammar instruction. Talking about activities, materials, and resources, we have that Calderon and Vallejo expressed that task-based learning and collaborative activities encourage communicative competence because students actively use English while completing meaningful tasks. Regarding instructional materials, Gilmore explains that textbooks, authentic materials, and visual resources provide contextualized language input. Also, technology also plays a significant role. As Parent and Legard highlights that digital platforms, educational application, materials online extend learning opportunities beyond the classroom and promote learner autonomy. Through my practicum, I observed that lessons became more dynamic when teachers combined traditional resources with digital tools. Teachers' language proficiency and classroom management. So, another important component is this because first, maintaining a positive relationship between teachers and students contributes significantly to classroom motivation. Frisbee and Martin expressed that positive teacher student rapport encourage participation and create a good environment. Providing clear instruction is also essential. Scrivener explains that students perform classroom tasks more successfully when teachers give simple, organized, and understandable directions. Hidayati also emphasizes that appropriate grouping strategies and seating arrangement promote interaction and cooperation. Fulcher finally states that assessment and feedback are fundamental because they guide learning and help students to identify strengths and weaknesses, which is very important. These principles were reflected from my classroom observations and become criteria when I was analyzing the teaching performance. Talking about classroom discipline and language management, the final theoretical topic was focused on that, according to Emmer and Sadborny, consistent classroom discipline creates an organized environment where learners can participate actively and remain focused on instructional tasks. Language management is equally important. Macario explains that teachers should maintain a balanced use of English and the student's first language, while English should be the primary language of instruction. Occasionally use of the first language may facilitate comprehension, especially when introducing complex concepts. During my day observations, I observed that effective classroom management contribute not only to better discipline but also to greater student participation, which is good, which is what we expect from our students. Finally, talking about our previous studies, the first study, conducted by CEO and Brown, emphasized the impact of systematized multimodal literacy practice on English language learners. Their findings demonstrate that structured instructional practice significantly improve students' writing fluency and textual organization. The second study, developed by Suzuki and Komos, analyzed the effects of repeated speaking tasks on oral performance. They conclude that repeated communicative activities improve fluency, grammatical accuracy, and language complexity. These previous studies reinforce the importance of reflective teaching, communicative methodologies, and systematic instructional practice, which are also central components of my own research. Thank you so much for your time.